Welcome to the EOB Podcast, where we talk about the weekend box office and the new openings this week. I am your host, Ben No. So, welcome back, everybody. Last week was a spring break. The kids were off, so I took a break from the podcast, and now I'm back. Well, it turns out that the previous podcast, the one we did 2 weeks ago, was the final one that I did with Sen. That means it's just going to be me doing this podcast by myself. I might have him on when scheduling permits. So how about we get started? Last weekend we have, I believe, about 4 wide releases. They were A Quiet Place, Blockers, the movie Chappaquiddick, I think the movie about one of the Kennedys, and The Miracle Season. Let's see how those movies did. All right, let's jump right into the box office. At number 1 is really the surprise movie of last weekend is A Quiet Place, the horror movie by Paramount, starring Emily Blunt and John Krasinski. Yep, and it's also directed by him. This movie is surprising because it opened to 50 million over the weekend. It's a horror movie about a family who's on the run from these creatures that's out to get them. Attracted to noise, etc. It's a chase movie essentially, but with creatures. We don't know what they are. They're aliens, perhaps. Who knows? The movie is kind of reminiscent of like 10 Cloverfield Lane, etc. You know, at least from the trailer, it's kind of low budgety, so in a sort of way. It's out in the woods. They're running around. You barely see the creatures. You hear them. You hardly see them, except they show some glimpses in the trailer, but you may see more in the movie. That's what it feels like. And this is a movie that I felt could open to somewhere in the 10 to 50 million range, but this movie surprised me, and I haven't read the other box office report, so I believe it surprised them as well. Since this movie opened to 50 million and a horror movie in a time where there was kind of a lull since Ready Player One kind of not there, right? And horror movies, like I said in the previous podcast, are hard to predict. We don't know which one the fan base will support, and with a movie that opened to 50 million, this went beyond the horror fan base. We're getting some mainstream support for this movie as well, maybe because it's Emily Blunt in the movie, John Krasinski in the movie. Makes a return to these movies that more mature horror movie. It's not exactly horror movie. Maybe it could be like one of these alien movies, chase movies, that more family horror movie. About a family that's struggling to stay together, to stay alive, etc. So this movie surprises. Thought this movie would open low like typical horror movies, but hey, it did way better than I projected, and I believe other people projected as well. All right, let's move on to number 2 is Ready Player One. Is the Steven Spielberg movie. I think it's based on a book. It has numerous references to the 80s and 90s, like video games, toys, etc. I believe about a dystopian future where people just plug into a augmented reality and they play games, and that world was in danger, and all these players band together to save it. And this movie stars Ty Sheridan, Olivia Cook, Simon Pegg's in it, Mark Rylance, and others. As I mentioned, directed by Steven Spielberg. The movie opened to about 42 million-ish. In the second weekend, it dropped about 40% to gross 25 million. Typically, movies drop off in the 50s or 60s, depending on whatever, but 40% drop off is lowish. It's kind of decent. And right now, domestic gross is 97 million, and worldwide did pretty well. It pulled in 391 so far. I think China alone, it opened to 62 million. At least it grows 62 million there, so it's huge there. Domestically, it only pulled in 97 million in the second weekend, I have to say. And then overseas, it took in 294 million for a total of 391 million. So it's this movie did really well. I mean, I thought this movie could open to somewhere in the let's go take a look, 45 to 50 million range, and it was kind of there. I mean, it's just a little bit at the lowest end, right? But it's about not within my range, but just a little bit below there. A Spielberg movie, a special effects movie. Spielberg was always known to have polish in his movies, and I thought that, maybe like other people have caught up, other directors have caught up to him in that regard. And, for a movie to open in this range is actually pretty good, especially overseas, nearly 300 million. Yay. All right, let's move on to number 3. It's one of the new releases. It's a movie comedy called Blockers. About 3 parents, I believe, who trying to stop their daughters. Their daughters have a pact to, I guess, lose their virginity during prom night. And they found out about it, and they went out and tried to stop them. And pretty much this is more about adults trying to, living in the world of their children or their teenage children and meddling in their lives. The movie stars John Cena and Leslie Mann, and among others. Seth Rogen's a producer. The movie opened to 21.4 million over the weekend, which is pretty decent, right? I thought this movie might not do that well, but it did. Let me see what I had. I thought it could probably do about maybe like 10 to 15 million-ish, but hey, it did 21, so it's pretty good. And the budget's around 21 million, so it's already broke even. Blockers is very well reviewed as a 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. So for a comedy like this, I believe it's all rated. Yeah, so for all rated like this, it'll probably stay in theaters and for people to check out, especially movie during the spring break, and maybe that plays into this movie as well. So well-reviewed movie, a comedy, R-rated comedy, so I think it will have some staying power in the subsequent weeks. And, John Cena, he's quietly appearing in all these movies, comedies in particular. There's a recent one with, what was the recent one that he was in? John Cena, he was a wrestler, by the way, wrestler turned actor. He was in, Daddy's Home 2, provides the voice, one of the voices in Ferdinand. Who was in Sisters, Trainwreck. So, a lot of these comedies, family films as well. So I guess it plays into his persona, as a family guy. All right, moving on to number 4 is Black Panther. The movie continues to do well. It's already in its 8th week, and it's still top 5. I put in 8.4 million over the weekend. Drop off is about 27%. Domestic gross right now is 665 million. Let's take a look at the worldwide figures. The worldwide figure is at 1.3 billion. And, domestically, this is the top grossing superhero movie of all time. No one expected this to happen. We thought it would be one of the Avengers, and Avengers was at the time before Black Panther came along, was the highest grossing movie of all time. But right now, hey, it's Black Panther. And number 5 is I Can Only Imagine, another movie that can, speaking of movies that's doing well and holding up, is one of the faith-based movie that's based on the life of the lead singer of Mercy Me. It put in 8.4 million over the weekend. Drop off is about 20% from its previous weekend. About 70 million domestic gross so far. Budget is 70 million, so this movie is doing really well. One of the reason I can imagine is that it is based on one of the popular Christian bands, right? Based on the life, and they come and support the movie. All right, number 6 is Tyler Perry's Acrimony. The movie is already in its 2nd weekend. It put in 8 million. 53% drop off from its previous weekend. Domestic gross so far is about 31 million. This is a movie I thought could open to 88 to 10 million, but it did a little bit better. It did open to 17 million. Reviews are bad, about 25% at Rotten Tomatoes. But apparently, this is a Tyler Perry movie, and Taraji P. Henson, she was a star in Empire and other movies. Her career right now is on the ups and up, right? Good TV career. Her movie career is taking off, although some of her movies might not might not be doing well like Proud Mary, her previous movie. It only had a domestic gross of around 20 million-ish, open to 9 million, but this one did way better. And I think this one, these movies are more in line with what she is known for, right? But Proud Mary is more of an action movie. She stars as one of these cold-blooded assassins who took a turn for the better, I guess, when she discovered a boy and that she wants to protect him. But I think Acrimony, Tyler Perry's Acrimony, is more in line with what she is known for, and I guess it plays to her strength. So that's why I think this movie is doing as well, and of course of the Tyler Perry brand as well. All right, number 7, a new movie from last week is the movie titled Chappaquiddick. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It opened to 6.2 million. Did a bit better than what I expected. I thought the movie could open to 2 million or so, because this is a biopic about I think Ted Kennedy. When he was young, and I guess an accident caused by him, I believe. I'm not too sure about the history. That caused the death of I guess one of his assistant or so. He and his family moved to protect his reputation. Movie stars Jason Clarke, Kate Mara, Ed Helms, Bruce Dern, Olivia Thirlby, a lot of people, character actors. That like I say, opened better than I expected, but it's not surprising that it opened to 6.2 million, because it is a movie, I guess, of not great interest to a lot of people, right? About a senator, even though it's from the renowned family, the Kennedys, right? The movie's well reviewed, by the way, 77% on Rotten Tomatoes. So maybe the reviews will help it linger in theaters. All right, number 8 is Sherlock Gnomes. The movie is the sequel to Romeo and Juliet. It pulled in 5.6 million over the weekend. This is already in its 3rd weekend already. I thought the movie would open better. I said maybe between 25 to 30 million, but the movie only opened to 10 million, and this movie happened 10 years after, roughly 10 years after Romeo and Juliet, and maybe because of the rights of the movie or something, or maybe characters are not interested, whatever. They switch distributors for whatever reason. We have a sequel to Romeo and Juliet 10 years later, and I guess the interest level has tapered off. The first movie did well. Right, the first movie, opened to 25 million, did roughly 100 million domestically, and 193 million worldwide. The second movie, I guess, is proving, sort of a tough sell. Maybe the people, the children who watched it. Remember, it was a family film. Has grown up and moved on, and I guess the brand name or the recognition is not there anymore. Maybe they went to watch Ready Player One. The children who grew up. But 20% drop off from the previous weekend is not bad. Domestic gross is about 34 million. Reviews is kind of poor, 18%. So it doesn't really appeal that much. Maybe kids love it, and adults doesn't. Usually, most of the time the critics are adults, right? And this movie probably they don't appeal to their sensibilities. It has lots of bathroom humor in it. I guess it works well with kids. I guess if you take a kid to see it, they'll probably think that it's the funniest movie ever. But adults have seen their fair share of these types of humor, and I guess they're less impressed. All right. And I guess we won't be seeing any more, Romeo movies or gnome movies. The budget for the movie is about roughly 60 million, right? So pulling in about 34 million so far. Worldwide, it hasn't opened that wide yet. So worldwide it's at 45 million. So, maybe they're thinking hard about a sequel right now. Unless a miracle happens overseas, and they'll continue to make more. Okay, let's move along to number 9 is Pacific Rim Uprising. It put in 4.9 million over the weekend. Drop off is about 47% from the previous weekend. Domestic gross is about 55 million. The budget is 150. Let's see, worldwide. Worldwide is at 267 million. So it's doing way better here than overseas. I mean, of the 267 million worldwide gross, 212 of that is from overseas. So as we can see, the market for giant robots and battling giant creatures is kind of low. The interest level is not that high outside of the Transformer movies, I guess. Michael Bay, even those, because of his brand, I guess, and Michael Bay fans. There are those. Sen is one of them. He's one of them. And yeah, I guess I thought this movie could get a bump, because the first movie was kind of well regarded, even though it didn't do as well. Because hey, who wouldn't like to watch giant robots battling, these giant creatures, right? Kind of like the Japanese, animation that we've seen, previously. But I guess for here, at least domestically, they're not that high, or the general audience are not that high on these type of movies. So they only had a 28 million opening, lower than the 37 the first movie did. And right now, of course, it's at least domestically, it's falling way behind the first movie, right? The first movie had 37 million opening, 101 million domestically, 411 million worldwide. The budget is 190 for that movie. This budget is for the sequel, Pacific Rim Uprising, is 150, lower. But I guess domestically it disappoints. We'll see if it could pull in decent numbers overseas in in the foreseeable future. But again, if you look at the China figure and the overseas figure, it did 90 million in China. Because that's I guess probably the biggest, if not is second biggest, if not the biggest market already, right? It is probably the biggest movie market already. So yeah, still ways to go to matching up from the first movie, but we're still early in the movie's life. But already, yeah, it's already in its third weekend, and it's dropping, to number 9, and it'll probably drop out of the top 10, next week. So that's it for this domestic run. It'll probably end its a run at around maybe around 60ish million or so. Let's move on to 10. Number 10, rounding it out, is Eye of Dogs. Is the new stop motion animation by Wes Anderson, and of course, with Wes Anderson, he has all these famous friends that he called in to voice the characters, like Bryan Cranston, Jeff Goldblum, Scarlett Johansson, Harvey Keitel, Bill Murray, Ed Norton, Liv Schreiber, and others. A movie about a boy. This took place in Japan, whose dog has kind of got swept up in this purge by the emperor. I guess he's a cat person, and he banished all the dogs in Japan to this island, so that's why it's called Eye of Dogs. And he went to this island to rescue his dogs, to find his dog, and he got the help from all these other dogs. Yeah, and he befriended them. Yeah, and that's how it goes. I guess the review, some of the critics kind of criticized the movie for cultural appropriation, kind of like they were made from outsiders. Of course, it's Wes Anderson. I don't think he's steeped in the lore and culture of Japan. But that's one of the criticism of the movie. Regardless, right? It is very well reviewed, the movie, 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's only in I don't think it played that wide yet, right? Let's how many locations of Dogs is. Yeah, it's only in 554 locations. And it's expanding some more this week as well. So 4.6 million in its third weekend. Domestic gross right now is about 12 million, and it's going to expand. It's probably going to rise up in the rankings come next week. All right, honorable mention number 11 is The Miracle Season, one of the new released last weekend. Stars Helen Hunt, about based on a true story about a girls volleyball team who lost their star player in an accident, and their season wasn't going well because of that, and they fought back. They found motivation to dig in and come back, and I guess to win the championship. This movie opened to 4.1 million. Let's see where I thought the movie would do. I thought it could probably open to 5 million, so it's about there. Because but a movie about volleyball, girls volleyball at that, or even boys volleyball, it's kind of a low level play on volleyball, and volleyball is not a huge sport, by the way, here. So it's actually kind of a miracle, that it pulled in 4.1 million. Well, I thought the movie could open to 5 million because it is an inspiring movie, during during the season where kids are off, they might found some inspiration from these type of movies. So yeah, the movie is about where I had it. All right, so that rounds out the top 10. Let's move on to the new releases. We have, again, we have about 4 wide releases, with House of Dog expanding, but there are a couple others. We have Borg McEnroe, the tennis movie about 2 titans in the tennis world way back when, I think in the 80s or so. Sgt Stubby, an American Hero, the new animation. The horror movie by Blumhouse, Truth or Dare. And then there's Rampage, the Dwayne Johnson movie that's sort of inspired by a video game. All right, how about we go with Borg McEnroe? So the movie stars Shia LaBeouf and Stellan Skarsgård. LaBeouf plays McEnroe, the hot-blooded tennis player who argues with umpires. He throws temper tantrums. On the flip side of that is Borg. Let's see, who is sort of the the Swedish tennis machine, very well reserved, who has this controlled anger in him. He wants to be the best in the world tennis, and he wants to be, I guess, loved as well. Björn Borg is played by, I guess, Swedish actors. Let me see if I can pronounce this right. Sverre Gunnesen, I believe. Okay, excuse me for that butchering. So he plays Borg, and Shia LaBeouf, McEnroe. This movie is called Borg versus McEnroe. Tennis match, the first time meeting tennis rivalry. Again, this movie is about tennis, not a huge sport, at least not mainstream, I guess, a topic, as we know, and it's not like football or baseball here. So I see this as an indie movie, kind of like others. There was one with Emma Watson as well. That's about, let me see. Is it not Emma Watson? No. Not Emma Watson, but what is that thing? Let me see. Emma Stone. Yeah, there was this other tennis movie by Emma Stone, by the name of, let me see. Let me look that up. Battle of the Sexes, which happened last year. She played Billie Jean King. Let me see. Yeah, and Battle of the Sexes recently, in limited release in 21 theaters, I think it opened to about 24K or 25K. When it was released wide, when expanded to wide, it pulled in 3.4 million. So I guess this movie it's kind of similar, although this one is more, I guess, macho in a way, because it's about 2 guys with opposite personalities. One is more open, hot-headed, hot-blooded, whatever you call it, and what the one is more reserved, and and it speaks to the inner demons of these top players and what they went through to reach the top. And regardless, right, I think this movie would open similarly. I think it could probably have a opening in the 5 million range, because hey, again, it's tennis. Not a huge sport, and not a movie that people would, turn out for, because again, it's tennis. Okay, on the higher end, if it did really well, it could do 10, but I'll stick with my number about a 5 million release, because hey, again, tennis. All right, let's move on to our next movie. Is Sgt Stubby. Animation is, I guess, is based on a true story about a homeless dog who got named Stubby, and because he ran into a group of soldiers who got stationed in the town, and they adopted him, and he went through the training, got bonded with a soldier in particular. This movie took place during World War One, and as the promos say, it's rare to find an animation that takes place during World War One and about soldiers. It's kind of like the forgotten war right now, as they say, right? At least that's what the promos say. This movie has the voices of Helena Bonham Carter, Logan Lerman, Gerard Depardieu. It's an animation. It's not by Pixar, I believe. It's not by Disney. It's directed by Richard Laney. Let's see who did the movies, who did the company credits. Okay, so it's distributed by Fun Academy Motion Pictures. This movie is not done by any of the big animation studios, nor is it done by the big studios or little studios here. It's distributed by Fun Academy. So I guess this movie is kind of financed by outside money. it's independently made. In essence, right, this movie is about a man and his dog bonding together, going through life, about getting acceptance. The dog is cute, right? It's front and center in the poster, wanting you to love him, and it loving you. But again, not distributed by, it doesn't have more. I guess what I'm saying is, doesn't have a marketing muscle behind it, and animation wise, it's kind of a low level, right? But it's a family film, cute dog. Maybe could open to maybe in the 10 to 50 million range, if not lower, right? Again, like I say, this movie doesn't have that marketing muscle behind it, so it 10 to 15 million range, I think is going to be decent opening for this movie. All right, let's move on to Truth or Dare, the movies by Blumhouse, by Jason Blum. The low budget horror movies, but pulled in huge box office. Again, we have another horror movie in theaters already that opened to 50 million. Will the market support two? I say yes, but one of the movies will take a hit, and if Truth or Dare did well, then that means the audience will come from A Quiet Place. Truth or Dare, is traditional horror movie, right? A concept about a group of friends who went to Mexico, I believe, and play a game of Truth or Dare, and the game followed them back, and they can only tell the truth. If they lie, they die. If they don't play the game, they die. And for some reason, a mysterious force holds them to this game for some reason, and I can see this movie doing really well. Like I say, Blumhouse has more hits than misses in this genre. I kind of thought it was an interesting concept, right? And it's kind of scary because of people when they are I guess taken over by this mysterious force. They have these creepy smiles, which is not physically possible for humans to do, and I guess that's kind of what makes it scary, right? Because of people having all this expression, this creepy smile. That's the scary thing, right? But on the surface, it's still a game about like the 10 little aliens picking off these characters one by one, and to see who is the last one standing. And like I said, right, these horror movies are very difficult to predict because we don't know which one they will support. But typically, Blumhouse productions, Blumhouse horror movies, will do probably pretty well, mainly because of their low budget. Right, even if they failed or they didn't open that well in theaters, it would still do well. It would still make money, like either in home video or whatever, because of this low budget. But for this one, I think that it could probably open to maybe 25 million or more. Like I said, I'm just throwing a number out there because I don't know, mainly because, like I say, horror movies are difficult to predict, and because like A Quiet Place, I didn't expect it to do that well, but it opened to 50 million. Truth or Dare, more traditional scares, maybe that's what people are looking for. I wouldn't be surprised if it did way more than 25 million or way less than 25 million, but personally, I'll go with 25 million for Truth or Dare. All right, finally we come to Rampage, movie starring Dwayne Johnson, based on a video game about a giant ape, just destroying the city. And this one, Dwayne Johnson plays a zookeeper, I believe, who befriends an ape who got enlisted willingly or unwillingly in an experiment. Took some sort of serum that causes it to increase in size and power. And of course, there's other creatures within this experiment. They escaped, and like Johnson and that giant ape team up to fight these creatures. Being this a Dwayne Johnson movie, I think it's going to do well. It's a family film, by the way. Action movie, plays to Dwayne Johnson's strength. I think this movie could open to 45 million, if not more. All right, so that's it for this week. Tune in and to see how I did with my projections in the next podcast.